Welcome, everybody, to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. We're so excited today. We have the amazing guest Amit Goswami with us.
Welcome.
So our good friend Brian Scott turned us on to you. So we've been studying up on your material, and we are in for a mind-blowing conversation today. So Leah's going to read your bio, and then we're going to dive into the heart together, and we'll start the interview.
Okay. Theoretical quantum physicist Dr. Amit Goswami is a revolutionary amongst a growing body of renegade scientists who in recent years has ventured into the domain of the spiritual in an attempt to both interpret the seemingly inexplicable findings of curious experiments and to validate intuitions about the existence of a spiritual dimension of life. A prolific writer, teacher, and visionary, Dr. Goswami has appeared in the movies What the Bleep Do We Know?, Dalai Lama Renaissance, as well as the award-winning documentary, The Quantum Activist. Welcome.
Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
All right, so what we're going to do now, if everyone could focus your attention in the area of your heart, and if it helps, you can put your hand on your heart. Now imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Try a pace of 5 seconds on the in-breath, 5 seconds on the out-breath, in and out through the heart. And we'll just do this for a minute. Now, as you're breathing in and out through your heart, think about a place in your life that makes you feel in a deep state of ease. Maybe it's a place in nature, like the beach or in a forest, or maybe it's at a relative's, but wherever that place is, just be there now and breathe in the feeling of ease with each breath in and out through your heart as you continue to breathe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out.
And next, continuing to breathe in and out of your heart, call to mind and really feel into your appreciation for a certain living creature. So maybe it's a pet, maybe it's a person, but think of someone who makes you feel wonderful, who's easy to love, who loves you. Smile as you appreciate this person or this pet.
All right. So now that we are in the heart, Leah's going to start off by asking a question.
Of course.
Okay, so I would like to begin with your description of what is the difference between conventional spirituality and quantum spirituality?
That's a wonderful question. Conventional spirituality, especially for the esoteric tradition, wisdom traditions, is centered on enlightenment. The way they understand it is self-realization. Who am I is the question that drives the journey. And all the way when you find out who I am, you find that I am no self. There is no self. And when that experience happens, Buddhists call it the no self experience, then you transcend reality and you experience is the wrong word here. So you have to be very careful because we are jumping into the unconscious when we go beyond the subject-object state world. But that is what the claim is, that you go into reality in suchness, and that's when you become enlightened. So that's the focus. And that being the focus, the world is negated. This particular item, actually, even religions who become exoteric, not so esoteric, popular religions, they also keep. You always hear religions undermine this world and ask people to prepare for after death so that they can go to heaven. All the effort goes into what happens after death rather than living a peaceful, happy life here on earth. So in quantum physics, what we discover is, of course, the spiritual traditions are right when they asserted consciousness is the ground of all being. But the emphasis on the self-archetype is a little misplaced. Self-archetype really is when you are ready to escape the world. You are tired of this world. What you feel is that life is suffering. And if you look at Buddhism, this is the way Buddhism starts. When you realize life is suffering, then you go into search for the self. Okay, who am I and what is my final destiny? And then you find, yes, there is oneness, and that's what everybody's final destiny. But before then, before this non-attachment to the world happens, we have to stay in the world, and then the focus should be, how can I be the best I can be in the world? So quantum science of consciousness is shifting the focus, because unless you're ready for that final journey, going into it just is a waste of time and waste of emphasis, and not caring about the world is not helping the world very much. The world is in chaos. We need creative people to pay attention to the worldly goodness of everybody. So quantum spirituality is about exploring archetypes and embodying them. Archetypes like love, beauty, justice, truth, goodness. These we explore and embody. If we explore and embody goodness, for example, we deal with power in a transpersonal way, we deal with wealth in a transpersonal way. In this way, the world also can change. This rich-poor division and the powerful and less powerful, the elitism in democracy, all this can be solved by investing and investigating, exploring, embodying the archetype. This is the lesson of quantum spirituality.
I would like to take that a step further and just hear you talk about the brain as a quantum system and what that means for us.
Yeah, so the brain is crucial, and we started with the heart meditation. I hope we'll come to that too, because heart is also crucial. Brain is crucial. Brain is our first instrument that we become aware. We identify with the brain very solidly. No one can escape the identification with the brain. As soon as you become 1 year old, we are capable of making mental memory, and we start forming a mental ego, which is solidly based in the brain. So this being the case of every child that grows up, the brain then becomes paramount in our spectrum of interest, and we are not doing it very well because brain has some built-in difficulties. First of all, the brain has to provide a forgetfulness of that spiritual oneness, because otherwise the oneness experience make it a very unstable experience in this physical body, in the brain. For achieving stability, one has to forget that one is one. This drive is called a drive towards separateness. Graph, psychologists call this hylotropic, and compared to holotropy, which is a drive toward the oneness, which we get later. But initially, we need hylotropic because we have to develop the ego in order to collaborate with the holotropic drive that takes us to the quantum self, quantum way of living. So this is the way we live. One pole, ego, conditioned and separate, the other pole, quantum self. The hylotropy has to dominate to some extent our growing up developmental period. So the ego develops, and the brain has to have me-centeredness. Ego is me-centered rather than I-centered, which is the more expanded experience of the world. So what happens then is, in additionally, brain has the animal ancestry, instinctual negative emotions, and there are also some pleasure circuits that also come from animal ancestry. So the combination of this, me-centeredness, negative emotions, and pleasure circuits, which has the possibility of pleasure addiction, really makes the brain very machine-like. In fact, worse than machine in some way, because it's negative, pleasure-centered. Pleasure-centered means we objectify others. For example, men objectifying women is what prevents them from loving. Women can objectify men too, but that doesn't happen as frequently as men objectifying women. So these characteristics of the brain makes the brain a very Newtonian system. And the brain has to become quantum. Of course, the heart has the same problem. Heart has a self too, and that too has a tendency of being very Newtonian condition. And again, the recipe is kind of meditation that you began the show with. That's wonderful. Why? Because it takes us to the quantum heart, coherent heart. And this coherent movement that suggests quantum also can happen in the brain. When we meditate and when we live a creative life, brain likewise becomes coherent between its parts. Neuroscientists are now discovering the power of the synaptic connections. It's the synapses that connect different parts of the brain. The more you are in the quantum self, the more you are expanded consciousness, the more you want to love and learn to love and embody love, the more the brain also gets all over the brain, distributed. Instead of the self being localized in one place, now the self is taking place in many places in the brain. Brain, different parts start becoming coherent in their dancing about. So these things are to be understood. And if people work towards making the heart quantum, making the brain quantum, that is the transformation we're looking for. The world would be much better for it.
Mm.
So what are the ways to bring the heart and brain into the quantum? You talked a little bit about exploring archetypes. The how is always really interesting to me, and I'd love to hear your best hows. What is the best way to proceed on that journey?
Yes, so we have some built-in drives which should help. What happens in child development? We have now studied it quite thoroughly, and quantum physics gives us a total understanding of child development. What happens is very interesting. At the age, of course, mother's love is our first introduction to coherent love, coherent heart. But many kids, especially males, their brain is built in such a way, and this is necessary, don't question it, this is the way it is. So my brain, Kyle's brain, is different from your brain.
Yes.
That you like relationships more, and we can avoid relationships, we can suppress emotions. The brain is built in such a way. The amygdala, which holds the negative emotional brain circuit, they're connected to the right brain for males and connected to the left brain for females. So females, left brain is the conscious part of the brain, right brain is unconscious. So because it comes to our unconscious, we can suppress them much more easily than you can as a woman. And because you cannot avoid emotions anyway, you might as well go to relationship, which will bring up emotions around health. And because they can suppress emotion, they don't have to be engaged in relationship. So what happens then, as a result of this, men become weak in heart. And females who are strong in heart, unfortunately, it didn't last either. There is another development that occurs at age about 5 to 7. This time, what awakens is the navel chakra. Chakra is a word that Indians use for Sanskrit word that Indians use for the centers of feeling in the body. That comes from the root chakra, then sex chakra, then the navel chakra, navel organs, heart chakra, and brow chakra, crown chakra. This one. So the point of it is that the navel chakra is not about loving the other in relationship. Navel chakra is loving yourself. So navel chakra, if it's not awakened, is very bad for the men, because what happens is that the brain already is me-centered, and then you're adding more me-centeredness from your navel chakra. So awakening of the navel is very important. So boys who awaken the navel chakra, they are capable of getting into awakening the brow chakra as well, and they become creative and successful in their later life. But the men who do not succeed in developing the navel chakra beyond the what they have, they are mis-centered and stuck to be mis-centered. And this is the people, this is the character that you get who watch the social media all the time, cell phones all the time, information processing all the time, dumbed down, cannot handle meaning, cannot handle relationships, are racist, sexist, all those things. So what happens to females? Females have love, other love at least. So although this is a problem for females, because the navel chakra is about self-esteem, self-worth, but it is also about taking risk, courage. And parents are usually afraid for the girls to go out in the world and adventure of taking autonomy and decisions on their own, because they feel that girls may not be so safe to be out there. And this is continuous in every culture, even in America or Europe, which is pretty advanced economies. And we do expect some civilized behavior, but of course, the truth is that there is danger. Parents are reluctant. And so therefore, the girls invariably develop a lack of strength in the navel chakra. This is the male-female dichotomy that develops, and that is a problem later on. So how do we develop the quantum brain, develop the quantum heart, develop the quantum navel? Is through our childhood, if every transaction is done properly. And then we get a second chance at age 15, all of us, when the meaning question comes, holotropy becomes very strong. And then again, who am I? What is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my life? These questions come. And how do we handle it today? We go to a school counselor who just gives us career counseling. But career is not a thing. I mean, that does not cover meaning and purpose of life today. Career is just something that you do, that you earn money with. And so this is a major problem. We have a very high teenage suicide today. And the reason is these teens who are lost in information processing and cell phones and social media. All of a sudden, at the age 15, when they're beginning to go to high school, they find that I don't know what meaning of any of this is. I don't know how to process meaning. How do I find it? How do I find purpose? So some of them feel so helpless that they commit suicide. Others are not so unlucky, so they go on, but this weakness is a huge problem. And then a second chance also to experience love, romantic love. And that experience, again, the same thing. Girls experience it much more easily than the boys, because boys are that I won't be vulnerable to a girl, that kind of mentality. And that mentality makes them defensive. They won't open up. That defensiveness has to be given up. You have to be vulnerable in order for the heart to jump into quantum leap. So these things we now understand very, very well with quantum science. And hopefully, the application of it, when we learn these things properly, we can change our educational system. But right now, what you guys are doing, these are the only way that a person can get education about quantum heart and quantum brain and quantum navel chakra. Whereas at the higher education system at Harvard and Princeton, they don't teach these things.
Well, I would love to hear you dive more into the quantum system of the heart and what is actually happening at a quantum level when we change the way we feel by going into the heart like we just did.
Well, actually, the quantum leaping is not an easy affair. That's the first thing. So what happens at the heart chakra, there are two systems here, immune system and the heart. The heart is to the left, immune system is more to the center. The organ, specific organ is called thymus gland. This thymus gland, although it is not as much active after we are about 16, 17, that's the time when thymus gland is very active. So at that time is when this romantic love comes to us. How? Look at the immune system's function, thymus gland's function. This function is to distinguish between me and not me, you. Distinguish means what? I look at you with suspicion. You character. What is it going to do to me? Some defensive, right? It's that the natural tendency of that we have built in, immune system is built in. So even when a boy sees a girl, it's still that immune system natural reaction. I'm going to be defensive. Who knows if I am vulnerable, then what she will want, maybe a car, and I am in my vulnerability, I give it to her, disaster. I don't want to commit. I don't want to get into involvement. So this attitude, this defensiveness, keeps us from quantum leaping. So in the case when we suddenly see a girl and a man sees a girl and feels that, okay, this one is just so appealing to me that I will throw up my shield. I will be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Mutual decision, simultaneous decision is what takes it for a quantum leaping of the heart. Heart ordinarily is just a pump, nothing special about it. It's, of course, it's very important, circulates blood, circulates food, circulates oxygen all over the organs, all over the body. But it is still a very Newtonian function that it is performing. All of a sudden, how does it learn to love? This has been a huge secret, right? Mm-hmm. And the answer is that because it's making a quantum leap of having coherent movement, and it shows up in these experiments that has been done in California.
So I'm thinking about, when you went along and talked about the development through childhood and for boys and girls becoming men and women, there are so many people who did not receive the correct parenting or love at these different stages. And so there are wounds within them and a way that they did not develop in their brain, their heart, their chakras. So for people who have a lack of development, what is the best path to, if you have either an overly developed or underdeveloped energy center, how can you best, we practice heart coherence and that is a great way, but I'd love to know any other ways that you feel that a quantum healing can take place in so many people who have wounds in their childhood and didn't receive correct things at their developmental stages.
It's a wonderful question, and let's address it fully. So what one has to do is to really, first of all, the worldview is very important. Today, we live in a materialist worldview, religious worldview. Religious worldview says blanketly, suppress sex, suppress it. It's not good for you. And materialists believe just the opposite. Sex is, of course, permitted. Let's have as much pornography as we want, as much as sex as you want. Let's swap wives and whatever, swingers life. Everything is okay. Permissive society. So people of the teenage really become very confused. Just imagine a boy of 12, not really ready, has never seen even a naked woman, a naked girl that is, all of a sudden finds out that, oh, it's just typing in some letters on his computer and he can access all this, not only naked people, but also what they're doing. And that gives them a very wrong impression of sexuality. Top of that, the schools are so dumb that they don't even tell them. Everybody's ashamed of the fact that pornography is available on the internet. They keep it hidden as if they pretend that nobody knows anything. So what they teach is still that birds and the bees kind of sex. Every kid knows that already, way before the teachers teach it. So sex education is a huge problem. One has to be frank about sex. One has to realize that every kid now is growing up with this pornography on their internet, and you cannot prevent them from watching it and finding out. And therefore, we have to tell them what the healthy way of using sex is. Sex is for reproduction. That was used to be for animals long time ago, millions and millions of years ago. We were animals, and at that time, sex was for reproduction. Animals don't have that level, don't have any other interest. But even primates learn that sex also is pleasurable. So sex becomes sex for pleasure. So those people who suppress sex, they are really, 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 really backward. We have long gone beyond sex as reproduction alone. Sex as pleasure is an acceptable human tendency. The question is, where are we now? If we just have sex for pleasures, what happens? If sex is entirely for pleasure, we already have a centeredness on the me. And then I am a man, you are a woman, I see you, and what would be my tendency? I would look at you as a pleasure object and objectify you. And how can then you reciprocate if I want to love you later? Love cannot be that way. If I think you are an object, how can you respond about a sudden and a person with a subject, with a person that can love me back? So these kids, they never learn about the fact that the other is a conscious other. You have to see that. You have to look at the eye of a girl and find out that, yes, she is also looking at me and she is as conscious as I am. This is not an object. I have to have a relationship with another person like me. This single thing, and here I'm taking the man's example because men have this tendency much more than girls do. These tendencies is the most disaster. This is what leads to all the sex scandals you hear, sex abuse that you hear in campuses and later on in offices and in every workplace. This is the single thing that if we change, that if we teach people that, look, pleasure objectifies the other. So we must move from pleasure into exploration of love. Sex is a way to explore love. Teach simply this, that, look, every kid can find out when they have the sexual experience that if you cuddle after a sexual act, what happens is that all of a sudden, your consciousness becomes expanded and you start feeling of caring for the other. Where does that come from? Caring is an inclusion. It means that your consciousness has expanded to include the other. If every kid discovers that yes, actually even sex, which is pleasurable, but it is actually a pathway to love, to include the other in my consciousness. If they just had this experience, and at that age, it is the best time to learn this experience. Later on, we become too jaded. At 15 or 14, when we are having just sex for the first time, that's the right time to learn this. And once you learn this, you can never objectify a partner, never. And then you cannot abuse. If the other is like me, how can I abuse? So sexual abuse will go away from society. So these things we are discovering, but of course people have to hear it. And your show is one of the places that I said. You are doing a wonderful job by just being here.
Thank you so much for that. I would love to hear just a little bit more about how your thoughts and feelings get sent out at a quantum level, like the magnetism of that. What is happening at a quantum level because of what you think and you feel?
Yeah, so quantum worldview, I also, of course, the details of it also involve the quantum leap. That cannot be avoided. Of course, some of it is built into us pretty easily. But in truth, these feelings that we get after sex, for example, of expansion, that does not last very long. That goes away. And then again, I am back into objectification and defensiveness and all that. So that's simple. So quantum worldview says that the human base level condition, this Newtonian brain, the Newtonian heart, these things are not permanent conditions. We can change them. Brain, of course, has neuroplasticity. It's now well known. The hearts also have a little brain in it. And that's how we get a self at the heart. And that too has neuroplasticity. And therefore, the heart can be awakened, the brain can be awakened to do new things. Creativity is the way that we awaken the quantum nature. Creativity, how it works, quantum science is also teaching us that. Even before quantum physics, already creativity field researchers discovered that creativity consists of 4 stages. It's not just work, like many scientists still think. It's not scientific method, which is just work, and verify. No, it's not work. Creativity works with work, and then just relax. And then work, and then relax. This is a mystery until you realize that in quantum physics, objects are not things. Objects are possibilities for consciousness to choose from. So when you are relaxing, what you generated as imagination by your doing, like we do, those things become possibilities of new meaning. And they expand like waves. The waves of possibility. And then consciousness has a much bigger possibility to choose from, much bigger pool of possibilities to choose from. And it can choose the new easily. So that's doing and being. I call it a do-be-do-be-do. You remember that Frank Sinatra jingle? Long ago he did a film called From Here to Eternity. And that has this line, do-be-do-be-do. Beautiful song. So that do-be-do-be-do is the process. Do and be, alternatively, imagination, and then relaxing, imagination, relaxing. And suddenly one day, when you are relaxing, like shaving, like sitting idly, for me, it was always sitting with a big bottle of Diet Coke, wherever I am. And you know, that's how always that these ideas come as the quantum. And people can learn it. Anyone can just, you have to have resilience, agreed, and you have to have tenacity, and you have to have focusing ability. You have to focus on imagining various things, because otherwise the possibility waves would not be substantially directed towards the problem you're trying to solve. But this problem solving is just not Einstein's of the world. It is also people who are exploring love. How can I love this question? Precisely, that's how I did it. I had this question because what was happening was that my wife, very erudite person, and a very nice person, actually, spiritual. But what was happening is that she was developing a tremendous amount of anxiety because we had a huge age difference, and I was 20 years older than her. And I was traveling a lot, and she was worried that one day I'll just collapse and die, and she will be home. And so, unable to help me, and she just got very, whenever she thought of that, she started getting anxiety. So she started coming with me, but then traveling did not suit her. That also made her feel bad. So we had to find a solution. And I thought, okay, this is my chance of going beyond the stage of love that I'm in, which was a very comfortable, complementary relationship. We were definitely in a loving relationship, no question. But to solve this, I had to solve the problem of what to do about this irreconcilable difference. She doesn't want me to travel, whereas I need to travel. All this work that I have for myself, quantum activism, that requires going and interacting with people. So I was very reluctant to change that. So one day I was having a fight with her. And then all of a sudden the thought came that, oh, geez, I love this woman so much, and why am I fighting? And this is ridiculous. So immediately the thought came, okay, time to take a break, go to the bathroom. Literally, I'm just hearing myself listening to these instructions coming. Go to the bathroom. All right. So I go to the bathroom and the instruction came that take a deep breath and do the kind of love meditation that you had initially. So I was really doing this breathing and then holding the breath and breathing out and moving energy like this, qigong. And also thinking that I'm walking in all those. Your meditation is so beautiful. That's exactly more or less what I did. And of course, heart became active. And then I went out and it was an amazing experience. I was loving in my heart and fighting with my brain.
Mm.
And amazingly, that love in my heart changed the way that we are arguing. And since then, since that breakthrough, the difficulties were not the same way. Now, my wife would be able to make sacrifices when needed, and I was also able to make sacrifices. In other words, cancel travel when there was a need that could be changed, that could be adjusted. Whereas she was also able to accept the travel in a much more smooth way. So it is a very beautiful way that loving works. You become one with the other, and then you become oneself. And therefore, the same self is making decisions for both, which can be acceptable to both. So irreconcilable differences become very reconcilable in that condition. This is part of love that I discovered. We call it, of course, unconditional love in spiritual traditions. Empathy, that's another word that can be used. But empathy is often one-sided. This kind of empathy becomes very two-sided because the person is able to reciprocate. So this is non-local empathy, not the local empathy that behaviorists, cognitivists also talk about. Non-local meaning oneness of the two, signal-less communication, ESP intervenes between the two so that you know exactly how the other is feeling, and therefore you can act from that wonderful feeling for the other as well as myself.
I loved all that, and it made me think of the power of our thoughts and our feelings. And, we focused a lot on good feelings, but there are a lot of thoughts and feelings that create disease in people. And you talked a little bit about anxiety. I think fear is one of them. I had cancer. It's been about 8 years since I was totally cancer-free. So I'm always really interested. I have a theoretical belief of how my cancer was created. I think it's very specifically fear in a certain area, especially where it manifested. So I would love to hear what's happening on a quantum level with disease and then with healing.
Yeah, so the fear, anxiety, these are all signs of weak navel chakra. When I analyzed post-mortem my wife's situation, then it developed that, yes, she grew up in a very protective family. Father was always protecting her from taking any responsibility for herself. And she was so protected that her navel chakra was very weak. So in spite of all the erudite things that she was able to do, she had huge amount of fear and anxiety when it came down to doing it by herself. She needed a support. Then she could thrive. That fear that arose when I was getting old and she would not have any support because the father, mother all passed away. And even a guru teacher that she worked with, he also passed away. So she really was just dependent on me, and that fear came back, and the anxiety was coming from that. So what is the remedy of all this? The remedy goes back in the childhood when we grow our children. We really have to take some responsibility to overlook. Today, both parents working, and we have this situation where kids basically grow up with caregivers. I'm not going to undermine caregivers. They often are very kind people, but still they're giving care to 10, 15, sometimes 25 kids, cannot pay attention like a mother does. So society has to do something about it. We need to pay attention. what is happening to kids when they are growing up? This lack of attention is a very serious problem. It's causing so many societal problems later on. People basically unable to hold relationship, unable to make a relationship, first of all, and then unable to hold relationship, second of all, and then, marriages break up so much, and people just don't have the ability of keeping stable relationship. I meet so many people who are so lonely, they're like 60, and many women already decide, no, I'm not going to find a mate who is satisfactory, and they're choosing to be single, but it's not pleasant to be single at older age. It's okay with me. I discovered unconditional love. I am single at the moment, and that's okay. I'm 86, so, but for people who are younger, it really at age 60 to decide to live singly is not a decision that, it's a forced decision. You're forcing yourself to be alone, and that's not good. One, quantum physics has a recipe for it. I mean, you can substitute God for relationship, and that is also quite effective. I teach that. But still, not everybody can do that. Develop that I thou relationship with God. It is, not in everybody's cup of tea. People who can do that, they will never be lonely in their life. But people who cannot do that, and we don't have joint families anymore, we don't have, kids taking care of us, that's not going to happen. So we, when you are becoming old, people are sent to this old folks home. Terrible, terrible experience. And then people have to live another 10, 20 years in that situation. Just imagine how bad that is. So we are not really, this society, we are so rich and people are making so much money, but we don't pay attention to how people are living, how many lonely people there are, how many people are having cancer because they don't know how to love, or COVID for that matter. Did you know that people who love have much less COVID, 50% less COVID, and people who do not love do not have a love relationship? And these things, Dr. Fauci would never emphasize this because so such a shame. That simple recipe, that look, get into love, that will keep you from COVID. It's simple, but society, American society just could not make itself say that, admit it.
I would love to take that advice you gave me and ask for more advice. So I'm gonna lean on you here a little bit. When I have experienced that, you talked about lovemaking in a oneness state as being the quantum leap, right? And I have experienced that quantum leap.
Of course.
And I feel that oneness. And then I revert back into separateness. And it sometimes feels like I'm two different human beings. One wild, animalistic human being, and one person that's connected to spirit and a deeply loving being. And it's like this battle of opening and closing and opening and closing. What ultimately leads somebody to just opening on like a more consistent basis?
Yes, very, very good question. Very advanced question of transformation as well. Okay, I have gone that gamut, and so I can tell you from both theoretical and experiential point of view. See, what happens is that quantum relationships, this non-locality, we feel it, but as soon as we feel it, we become separate again. And then we have to correlate again. So what correlation is very important. We have to have interaction with the other with the intention that we become one. That intention of loving is very important. So if we don't have that intention, then we cannot correlate anymore, and then we feel separate. So what happens to couples? They have intention. Any couple, initially they start with a lot of intention of loving the other. I can give my life for you, and we mean it. After the brain, this is why the brain is also very important. Brain becomes habituated. When the brain becomes habituated, brain contributes neurochemicals towards loving. This is dopamine and all the others neuromolecules. And these molecules really help us feeling the excitement of the relationship. But when these molecules are not emitted anymore by the brain, because brain has become habituated, then we are stuck. We are not feeling that excitement, molecular excitement anymore, and we lose motivation about loving the other. And then we still can reach momentarily those states of high non-local correlation, but then as soon as we experience it, it goes away. And we cannot connect it anymore because we have lost the intention that I love this person. So it's a very tragic situation. How to prevent it is to develop a relationship which will never tire of each other. That's what I meant by a complementary relationship. A relationship of togetherness, which I help you, you help me. You remember those dichotomies? Women have heart strong, men have strong navel chakra. So men can provide women the navel and also teach women how to develop a strong navel, give them more responsibility, help them to carry out their responsibility. And women likewise can help men to love. Literally, I mean, this is what happened with me and my second wife, who was an American girl, a wonderful woman. And literally, I didn't know how to love. And she was not very strong in her navel chakra. So we literally developed a very complementary relationship, and it was wonderful. So this helping each other makes it a tangled hierarchy. We are no longer, I am superior to you, or you, if from your own view, is superior to me. No longer is that is the dynamic. The dynamic is I help you, you help me, we are together. That togetherness dynamic, which we call a practice of tangled hierarchy, instead of one superior to the other, which is called a simple hierarchy in a technical way, we are tangled hierarchy, both contributing to the other, a circular relationship. So this circular relationship, complementary relationship, to build that, if that's the focus of a marriage, that's the focus of a partnership, then that partnership can last. And you don't have this problem of connection, separateness anymore. You're connected most of the time.
I would love to close on that. That just sort of fulfills everything that I love and love to talk about. We really love talking about men and women and relationships. So
Yeah,
that to me is a perfect ending.
I would just like to ask Amit, because we are so grateful for this time. How can our followers find you, support you, and yeah?
It's my website is www.amitgoswami.org. AmitGoswami.org. And anyone can look it up, look up the website and get a lot of information. Valentin Ornisar and I are in the middle of writing a book on quantum science of love and relationships.
Yeah,
Yes. We'll have to have you back.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah, that's our favorite topic.
It is.
Thank you. We also teach workshops on love, by the way.
Beautiful.
In fact, next week we have a workshop on the internet with Brazilians on love and relationship.
Wow.
Oh.
Well, if you send us any material, we will forever share that with our group. So
thank you. Now that I know you, we are going to be in touch, and we will do this.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you
I mean, it was a
so
pleasure getting to
much.
know you.
And bye, everyone. We love you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we meet again soon.
Okay. Yes. See you soon.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for all your wisdom.